That's one of the things that I would tell people when they're looking for passive income in the future, not today. If they belong to a company that has a 401k, and this may sound ridiculous, whether you do a Roth or a traditional IRA, if they're matching money, you better get in because it's a guaranteed return. You get to save the taxes that you pay on that. So instantly, if you're making decent money, it's 20% return. If somebody matches at 3% of your income, it can be a 50 to 100% return every year, tax deferred. Small amounts turn huge.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the RLT PIVOT Podcast. My name is Tracy, and I am joined with my incredible co-host, Mr. Dan Jensen. How are you doing, sir?
Doing absolutely fantastic. We got Dean Inniss in the house, managing partner at Your Best Life Now, which is an organization helping people to elevate finance, family, fitness, and faith to maximize their best life through coaching, community, and exclusive once-in-a-lifetime experiences. His unique background of business experience, law enforcement, martial arts training. You got such a big resume. I'm trying to get through it, but training and economic analysis gives him a rare perspective in that it enables him to successfully guide entrepreneurs, CEOs, and other top executives. Dean, like I said, what a resume that you got. Welcome to the Pivot Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am great. Don't get excited about my resume. That's what happens when you get old. Things start stacking up. I just had, it's my first podcast since I turned 60. So I'm excited. I'm going to deliver a lot of energy. We're ready to rock and roll.
Listen, don't put yourself down. There's a lot of people that are 60 I know that do not have anywhere close to the resume you have. So you have to do something to get there, right? So tell us a little bit about yourself in more plain English than I could deliver.
Sure. Sorry about that. I didn't create that. You know how that goes. Pretty simple. My dad was from the Bronx. Joined the military to see the world, ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, met my mom. She had an 8th grade education. They got married, had 4 kids, really good place to raise children, low to middle class, not a lot of rich people, very diverse for a very small community. Cheyenne's probably about 75,000 people, but it's old. It's older than I am. And it had the railroad go through there. It had the military base since the 1800s. So it's a really diverse community, a really close community, and had a great schooling there. But I was extremely small in Cheyenne because everybody that I went to school with was Scandinavian, big ranch guys, 6'4", 6'5", 250, no steroids. This is in the 70s and 80s, and they were big. I was, when I graduated from high school, I was 5'7", 120 pounds. So I started the martial arts real young. And I studied 5 different styles. I fought amateur for 10 years, won a couple of championships. When I got out of college, I studied economics, graduated in 85 when we had a huge recession. Obama said this last one was the Great Recession. Well, that's just more evidence of the wussification of Americans, because when I got out of school, the government had a hiring freeze. Inflation was 13%, unemployment 11%, and mortgage rates were 17%. Compare that to the Great Recession. Not so much. So, when I got out, I wanted to go in the FBI. They didn't have any openings because they weren't hiring. I went local law enforcement. It was a very interesting thing, making $15,000 a year, got shot at a couple of times. And I said, maybe I should go into banking. So I went into banking. The upside, though, I did law enforcement for 5 more years for free as a reserve because I was solo qualified and trained. And whenever our department needed help, I stepped it up and got in there. It was my community. I thought it was a good idea, learned a lot. And then I got into banking, worked with Wells Fargo for about 15 years. Then I went to work for a wholesale mortgage bank for about 9 years, had my son at 40. I was traveling all over. I was the #1 account executive in the country. And I decided that I needed to be home to be a dad. So I'd been offered a job as the president and COO of the largest mortgage bank in West Texas. I took it, got to be home for my son, T-ball coach, football coach, did all that stuff. Best job because I got to do that. Not a great job because I was kind of shackled in some of the things I could do, but turned that place around. Took it over in 2008. Do you guys remember what that was as it relates to mortgages?
That was a mortgage crash.
Debacle. Well, I took over that company in 2008 and doubled its size in 4 years from 500 million to over $1 billion.
Incredible.
Had a really good time with that. Made a lot of friends, coached a lot of people, and was able to retire at 50. I kept working for 6 more years. I should have stopped. But now when I retired, I get to do all of these fun things. So that's me in a nutshell. So let's get rolling.
Well, you know, you've got quite an impressive resume, and all of that is going to have a tremendous amount of skill that it just transfers into every single thing that you're doing, which is applicable for what we're going to be talking about today, which is building passive sources of income, alternate sources of income, which I think our audience loves to do. But one of the difficult things, I think, is when you don't have that experience, you don't have all of that background, and you've never done it before, starting is probably the biggest challenge for most people. Where do you even start? So, you know, you've moved from job to job to job, but what would you coach people on trying to get income sources from other places? How do you start?
Well, you know, it's a great question. And I'm going to refer back to something you said in a couple of your podcasts, Tracy. Treat it as a business. And all businesses have set goals and parameters that you're trying to accomplish. I actually only had really 3 jobs. Each one of them lasted over a decade, and I never quit a job. I was always recruited for a job until my son was born. And interestingly enough, I think that stability helped me identify passive income streams, because when I lost my father when I was 38 and he was only 57. And he's like most Americans, didn't plan for his future. And, you know, he didn't have a lot of debt, but my mom was left, and I've been able to help my mom since then. Changed my goal system, decided that I did not want to be in debt or any of those things when I was 50, and I wanted to have my family completely taken care of. So I dove into passive income streams outside the realm of a salary. You guys know I was a highly compensated employee, so I'm not going to pretend to be like the average American. But when I was working as a cop, I was making $15,000. When I went to work for the bank, I was only making $25,000. When I left the bank, I was only making $50,000. And that's when people really have a hard time planning for their future. But that's when I really started. And there's a couple of things that, you know, Dan said in a couple of the podcasts. Take it seriously. I don't care. He mentioned, you know, I don't care if it's a side hustle. One time he said, I don't care if you're just doing this to make a couple of extra bucks. I don't care if it's a part-time job, and I don't care if you're going to trade 20. He said, take it seriously. And I believe what both of you guys are telling them. And so what I would say the best way to start is pick an amount of money that you're not going to be doing trading with, or that you're not going to be doing this with, and that you want to define not a side hustle, but a future passive income stream. And so what I did was I figured I'd learned about diversity. I'd learned all that stuff. I was an economist. I studied all of that stuff. I looked at the economy, and everything that I did was planned 3 to 5 years out. So what's the first thing you do? And it's another thing that I'm going to refer back to Dan. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? So the basic things that I would tell your audience right now is what do you want? Is it going to be ROI? Is it going to be tax abatement? Is it going to be cash flow? You know, most people, if they're thinking of passive income, they're thinking of cash flow. Now, I would say that you need to balance it. If you're doing well now, plan for cash flow later, but you can still plan for cash flow. So cash flow can be one of those things. Asset appreciation. Right now, you know, that social value component is a really big thing. You guys see it in the stocks, right? We want to, you know, invest in stocks that are really conscientious of the environment, whatever. If that's your gig, put it in your goal set. I'm not going to make that call. But I would also say diversification. Passive income streams, make sure that you're not caught with your pants down. If you're trading and somebody like, I was laughing the other day, I was listening to Dan and he goes, somebody saw your big trade and they got you, right? They saw the trade, they got you, and it's done. You never want to be in a position where that one thing sinks you. So when I talk about diversification, it's not necessarily in stocks. It may be in passive income streams. So that's where I'd start. The other thing that is really important now that you didn't think about for 15 years was an inflation hedge. So those would be the characteristics I would tell your audience to look at and define what they want. That's the first key to passive income. You have to define what you want. It's kind of like the trade. Do you want to put 50,000 in your trading account? You want to put 20,000, or do you want to put $1 million? You better make sure you think about that long and hard, because Tracy said again, at the end of one day, you don't have anything to play the next day. You kind of made your decision for it. So there's a lot of similarities to what I'm going to talk about today, to what you guys have instructed your people to do. So like I said, I want to tell you guys, thank you for taking the time to educate people on that, because it's huge, huge.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely appreciate that, Dean. And you're probably the first guest that's actually quoted us before. So I appreciate that. I mean, thank you for listening to
That's
our show.
because Dean's smart. He knows we can't disagree with him if he's just quoting us. That's a power move, Dean. I like it.
I left out some things in my background. I used to stutter when I was younger, which is the reason why I got into martial arts, because I had anger issues, and my dad said, we ain't living with that. So got that fixed. Didn't fix the stuttering though. So to fix the stuttering, I joined the speech team in high school.
Oh, wow.
By the end of my senior year, I ended up with a full ride debate scholarship. So I do understand something that I'm going to give your people a clue on: research. So
there you go.
When I go on a podcast, I know who I'm talking to. And you know
Yeah,
what?
absolutely.
Because it validates not only the fact that you're there, but also the credibility of the people you're dealing with. And I'm not kidding when I say thank you guys for what you do, because it's huge.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. I do want to touch on a couple of things that you've already said, though. And you've brought some great points about, thinking about what you want and then writing it down. I've said this before in the podcast, though. You go and buy your first house. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't want, and you don't know what you want until you start getting some experience. So how do you actually go through the process of knowing what you want to even ask the right questions and get started in the whole area of, diversifying and all of that? That's still a step ahead of where a lot of people are just starting out.
Well, that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
One source is looking. And there's a lot more resources than there were when I was younger. We didn't have the cell phone. We didn't have, you're going to listen to this because I'm old. I'm telling you, man. When I was doing computer science, it was a keyboard, punch cards, and you had to make an appointment to run your punch cards through the computer. So you had to do your research the old fashioned way. But I would say this. Yeah, I would say this. Look, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today, as far as passive income, give you the ability to start small. And to your point, some people will never start anything, even if they do all the research, because, like you said, they don't know what they don't know. But if they get their feet wet and they see some things, then they'll start wanting to gain knowledge. The first thing I told people is I have a really good 401k. When I left Wells Fargo, it was $36,000 in 1998. Right now it's $300,000, and I didn't touch it once. I just managed it, right? And it's tax deferred. And that's one of the things that I would tell people when they're looking for passive income in the future, not today. If they belong to a company that has a 401k, and this may sound ridiculous, whether you do a Roth or a traditional IRA, if they're matching money, you better get in, because it's a guaranteed return. You get to save the taxes that you pay on that. So instantly, if you're making decent money, it's 20% return. If somebody matches at 3% of your income, it can be a 50 to 100% return every year, tax deferred. Small amounts turn huge. I taught people all the time, the majority of people in El Paso only make 35, 40,000 a year. That doesn't mean they can't be a millionaire. If they start, and this is a powerful lesson for any of your people out there, average American spends $55 to $58 on coffee and eating out at lunch. If they took that money when they were 26 or 27 and put it in a 401k and forgot about it, didn't add to it, just forgot about it, they would be a millionaire by the time they were 65 on that alone. That's just one setup of passive income that gets discredited all the time because you're not active and everything else. Well, I got to tell you, I put mine in places I can manage it. So I know the stocks that I'm investing in. I'm looking at the highest return because it's tax deferred. That's just one way that they can get their feet wet. And when 2008 hit, a lot of the employees there, I became the trustee because they were managing it terribly of the 401k. A lot of employees were calling me, should I pull out? Should I pull out? And I'm like, no, you haven't lost anything until you pull it out, right? Right? Well, guess what? In 12 months, they were back whole and earning. And during that 12 months, they got to buy stocks at a discount. So, I mean, that's just one way. And there's all kinds of ways we're going to talk about today to, get your feet wet, like you said. But the critical thing is, and this is what I tell everybody that I coach, start. You just got to start.
Yeah.
Even if you stub your toe. You guys have talked about this all the time, right? You start a small account. You got to start. You're never going to learn anything if you don't start. And you guys backed me up on that because I heard you. Yeah. I have recordings.
I think that's recordings. I think you're absolutely right. I think one of the biggest things for people is, obviously people range from geographically all over the country, all over the world, what income they have now, what expendable income they have. So all that changes. But the one thing I tell people is, like what you said, just start small, do what you can. And I think the reason people don't is because, I mean, you can even look at a T-bill, which is relatively safe. You get 5.2% now. And you're like, if someone's like, well, that's only, if I have $1,000, it's all I could get. I'm like, yeah, but I think passive income is in a sense, a little bit of an addiction. Once you start, you get addicted to it. You want to say, okay, well, I just made this much money from doing nothing and I still have my $1,000 and you get, it's a little bit of a start. But if you get that first step in and not worry about like how much I'm going to make on that first investment or the first stock I buy or real estate, whatever it is, you're starting somewhere and you're building something, right? And then later that small, smart decision, just repeat over and over again, eventually turns into something big, massive that you could really grow out.
Absolutely. The average person in the United States, the average person that has access to a 401k, only 33% do it. In my company, we had 68%. And you know how? Because at the end of the year, after I made them do something small that they would never miss, they saw the gains. That changed everything. More and more people started investing. So you're right. Go ahead, Tracy. Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think that, I mean, you both bring up some great points, and I completely agree. I feel that there needs to be an added component, which is one of the reasons that we are passionate about what we do. And that is education along with it, because even if you have a big sum of money, and you see this with lottery winners all the time, you get that big sum of money. And even if you were to invest it, it's gone within a year. They've spent it all because you start to get that cash and all they can think about is, oh, there's a gain. Let me spend it. There's a gain. Let me spend it. There needs to be an educational component that shows you how to still live your dream life, as you put it, and still maintain that for a long time and actually have true passive income, which is to maintain that capital and let it work for you. So that's one of the reasons that I do what we do right here. I love doing it for that reason, because I think that I know that when I was younger, I had a big sum of money and I was not educated as far as finances is concerned. I didn't have a role model. No one told me what to do with savings. I had no experience with the stock market at all. I was told, put it in a T4 bill, which, okay, that's fine. I put it in a T4 bill, but I didn't really know what else do with it. And at some point, I just eventually spent it all because I invested in myself. Obviously, I paid for my education and what have you, but I could have done so much more with that income, knowing what I know now, had I had some proper mentorship and some education. And it wasn't because I was greedy or because I'm not intelligent or any of those things. I am the opposite of those things. I just didn't have the financial foundation that was needed to make good financial decisions at that point. And I was young. You couple that together, it's kind of a perfect storm for having to do it again when you're in your 50s.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy and I share this. I've been trying to start a financial literacy program in all of the El Paso school system because, to your point, you don't have to take years to give people the necessary knowledge to start. I can tell you this, at the end of this hour, we will have given people tools that they can use to start in 1 hour. I've already given them one tool that can make them a millionaire at a $30,000 salary. One tool. Now, who's going to take the challenge and make a difference for not only their future, but their family's future? Who's going to make the challenge to learn an extra piece? The people watching this podcast have already crossed that one barrier. They want to learn. And that's the number one. Then they need mentorship. We're giving them that. Then they need 3, a little courage. Very little, because if they pull out there, this is an example I do for everyone, and this might help your people. When I was doing mortgages and I financed, 20,000 homes, okay, packaged billions of dollars of mortgage-backed securities. The one thing I always come back to is people come in and say, I don't have any money. I don't have any money. First thing I made them do is bring in their bank statement. And I circled everything on their ATM statement that was stupid, whether it was video rentals, whether it was McDonald's, and all of a sudden I could find $400 a month. And if they didn't have $400 in a month, I'd pay them $100.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, I paid $100 once.
That's incredible.
If they just pull out their bank statement, because now everybody does everything on ATM or credit cards. If you pull out those 2 things and you be honest and say, did I really need to do that? Did I really need to do that? Did I really need to do that? And then say, oh my God, if I take $230 a month and invest it in a 401k and have it either managed or manage it myself, and I could be a millionaire instead of eating at McDonald's twice this week or going to Starbucks for a $7 latte. I mean, really, there's no excuse.
Here's the power in what you're saying right now, because we all know that if we go to Starbucks, we've heard it all before, throw that $7 or the $3 or whatever every day, whatever. The power of what you're saying right now is actually looking at the compounded totals of what that costs you in a month.
Enormous. So that's tool number 2, right? Take out your monthly bank statement and your credit card statement and circle the things you really don't need to do.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got 2 ways. So what do you think if I give you a couple of forms of passive income?
I would love it.
Okay. So the first one I want to talk about that what I chose are some things that you can get in with a relatively low amount, say $50,000, something like that. Okay. Other than the 401k that you can get into for $2,500, it doesn't matter, right? That's a small way to start. T-bills, all those things you can do at varying amounts. But I'm talking about something that can have some passive income and an impact on your taxes at the same time. So syndications for multifamily are available in almost all the country. And what that is a group of people that put together a group of money, and you have a general partner and limited partners. And I'm a limited partner in 1,800 doors around Texas. And it was a brilliant move for me because I pay a lot of taxes, and I hate paying taxes because it's spent so poorly. So the truth is, though, I was looking for a way to abate my taxes. And the best thing that you can do is use the tax code, because the government can't finance everything they need to do. So when they need to do something and they can't afford it, they give private sector and people a tax break. It's that simple, right? Well, one of these things is housing. and updating housing. So during the Trump administration, they said, apartments are dilapidated, they need to be upgraded. So they said, look, if you invest in an apartment and you do these things to upgrade it, you get an accelerated depreciation of up to 100%. So some of these models that are buying apartment complexes will allow you to invest for $50,000. Now, why does that sound really cool? Because up until December of 2022, if they were going to do specific upgrades to those apartments, you got to write off $50,000.
Wow.
100% of your investment. Now it's gradually changing, going downward. Okay. But at that point, it was available. So what did I do? I took that 50,000, I got to offset losses. So what was my net investment? Depending on your tax situation, it could be zero.
Wow.
So you invest in this. Now, what's the key to this and why is it so brilliant? So this passive form of investment has cash flow based on the rents. Okay. Now the cash flow gets eaten up occasionally based on interest rates and variability of costs, but there's cash flow involved. But the real essence of this, it's a 3 to 5 year investment that you get 100% return right off the bat because you get it to offset any income, right? If you're a passive real estate, if you're a real estate professional in this particular case, but if not, we finance 25% of the apartment purchase. The bank finances 75%. We want 100% return. What does that mean the apartment complex has to be worth in 3 to 5 years when we sell it? How much does it have to be worth, Dan? If it's $10 million when we buy it, how much does it have to be worth when we sell it to get 100% return on our investment?
Using the tax code, it has to be even.
No, just even. Forget about that. We invest 25%. The bank finances 75%. So we put in 2.5 million to get 100% out. What does the apartment complex have to be worth in 3 to 5 years?
I want to say double.
No. See, that's the brilliant part because everybody thinks that.
I knew you set me up for a trap.
I did because it's a learning experience, not because everybody would say the same thing. You feel better now?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because
unless they all jump off a bridge.
But I wanted you to feel better.
Should be about 3.2 million, right?
Actually, it only has to be worth 12.5 million when we sell it, right? We bought it for 10 million.
Oh, okay, 10 million.
2.5 million in.
Yeah.
If we sell it for 12.5, we get 5 million. The bank doesn't get a return. They just get paid off. So that's the brilliance of this type of investment. The asset doesn't have to appreciate 100% for you to make 100% because you're leveraging the financing, which most people don't buy apartment complexes cash. They put a down payment, the bank finances the rest. So think about that. So you get the tax advantage, you get potential cash flow, 3 to 5 years, rents go up, and that's what the value of the apartments are, rents. It is a hard asset, so you're semi-protected, but you can get 100% return plus the 100% write-off plus any cash flow.
And is there a downside?
Investment, huh?
Is there a downside?
I'm going to talk about risks of everything that we do, right?
Okay.
First of all, you have to underwrite a property. It's just like everything else, but a lot of these syndications have models that do that, and they've been doing it for a long time. So really, you want to grade the syndication first. In other words, what models do they use? How do they underwrite their apartment complexes? Trust me, I went to an underwriting school that they provided. Then I tore up their subscriptions and I went through them myself and did it all, but they had a really good system. Okay. And so it made sense and it's working. Okay. So you mitigate risk with the tax write-off. You got a hard asset versus a stock or anything like that, because real estate generally appreciates, right? And you get a property that, because you're upgrading it, you're also going to have rent increases, which also increases your chance for the return.
Win, win, win.
It is. Now, what's the downside? What's the downside? If we have an overabundance of housing, We don't. Okay. There's not an overabundance of housing. If housing becomes super affordable, it's not. Okay. It's not
There's
going
no
to get
housing crash coming.
No, there isn't. And it's a really simple question. You're asking a guy that knows, right? Here's the deal. Everybody that bought a house in the last 3 years had to bid up on it and had to put down payment and had to qualify. Unlike in 2008, where if you fogged a mirror, you could get qualified. Okay. Everybody that bought a house qualified. Everybody that bought a house had to put more down on it and was in a bidding war. Everybody that bought a house in the last 3 years had about 25 to 30% appreciation. Even if they lose 10% this year, they're in great shape. Plus, those people generally, even before the last 18 months, got an exceptional interest rate. So are they going to be anxious to sell and buy a new house at a higher interest rate that costs more? No. In Texas right now, in El Paso, houses are up 7% year over year from last year. In Texas, 2.5%. In the rest of the country, average down 3.5%. So everybody that bought a house is still in great shape. And as the economy strengthens up, those houses are going to be fine. If interest rates stabilize and go down a little bit, I don't think we're ever going to see those low rates again. It was a problem when they did it. That's the reason why we're suffering now. The monetary control was terrible, but that's a different conversation.
Keep in mind, guys, if you have not seen Pivot Podcast or you fell behind on some, make sure you guys click the links, the videos up above. We'll take you to the next one, and you guys can watch all those. Dean, appreciate having you on. We'll see you guys next time. Everybody that watches Pivot Podcast each and every week, thank you guys. We'll catch you next week.